This is the first video I'm recording of the new year. I hope you guys had a great 2024. Let's make 2025 a great year. Last year was a roller coaster of emotions for me as far as like doing YouTube. I hit like 1,000 subscribers. I actually did good like video wise. Like a lot of people were tuning into the content and I don't know. I had a lot of fun. So I thought, why not start this year off by talking about some movies that I talked about last year, like reminiscing for old time's sake. And not just like looking at movies that I talked about. We're going to talk about some brand new movies that came out near the end of the year that I didn't get to make their own full-length video. So we're going to throw them in here too. Some of these might get their own full-length video in the future because Kraven the Hunter was really bad. And I want to make a video on that in and of itself because that movie blew. But for a lot of these, they're never going to get their own long-term like full video. So I was like, I can talk about them here and then problem solved. With that being said, I just want to thank you guys once again for making last year so incredible as far as just like YouTube wise. So let's continue all that hype into this year, man. I'm hitting 2,000 subscribers by the end of this year. Probably, hopefully, maybe not. Who knows? With that being said, let's actually get right into the video. Now, see, this is where I kind of got to the point that, like, there's no way Sony isn't trolling with these films. Because, God, how do you release Madam Web and Kraven the Hunter within the same year? They have to be laughing at us, making fun of us, because they assume that consumers will consume literally anything. This movie sucks. Like, I don't get how Sony allocates resources to make these movies when they could be doing literally anything else. Kraven the Hunter was somehow worse than Madam Web, and somehow like slightly better than Morbius, but it's just the same thing, different slice of cake. Like it's not a good movie. Kraven the Hunter especially was really boring. It really just felt like the writers didn't know what they were doing with these characters. Rhino was kind of cool, I guess. He looked decent in his movie. And then there's a bunch of other villains that are being wasted in this film. And it just sucks because they released the Venom movies were really good. I don't know how they keep fumbling everything that isn't Venom. Like everything that isn't Venom from Sony sucks. Besides Venom and Spider-Verse, everything else has been really bad. And especially last year, things were really, really bad for them. But yeah, all things considered, it's a bad movie. I wouldn't recommend Kraven the Hunter to my worst enemy. This movie didn't age all that well after the initial review. I was relatively positive towards this movie because when I first watched it, I was heavily blinded by nostalgia. However, after the rewatch, I just didn't like it as much. There's like a lot that's bad with it. The villain, the chameleon, she's just really boring. I don't think she's all that intimidating of a character. Awkwafina Fox is a pretty boring side character, and like she's not very interesting as a secondary protagonist to Poe. And not having the Furious Five definitely dragged this movie down a lot more than I initially noticed. However, like I don't think this movie's god-awful as some of the other movies we're going to talk about in this video. It definitely wasn't great. It wasn't interesting. And it wasn't a great Kung Fu Panda movie. But just as a movie, it's not bad. But if you're like looking at it as, oh, it's a Kung Fu Panda sequel, it doesn't do its job great. And I'm not a big fan of it. I forgot how truly awful Madam Web is as a movie until I rewatched it, and man, this movie sucks. Madam Web was one of the Sonyverse films that came out last year. You know, it was like in that same universe as Morbius and another movie that we're going to talk about later. But God, is this movie boring and bland. The only memorable part of it was that Sydney Sweeney was in it. Besides that, the plot kind of sucked. The characters were a nothing burger, and the villain, I forgot the villain's name. I don't even remember him. Even after rewatching it, I still remember him because he was just so boring and pointless, but his character sucked. I actually did a full video on Madam Web. It's not all that great because that's before I really started trying to make good videos. But if you want to watch it, it's going to be in the I tab up above. I said a lot more about that movie there than I probably can here. It just sucked, and I wouldn't suggest it. Definitely one of the worst movies to come out last year. Definitely one of the worst superhero movies of all time. I watched Moana 2 with my friends, so the experience was a lot better than if you just saw it by yourself. But man, this movie sucks. If you want to see a good Moana movie, just go watch the first Moana movie because Moana 2 just rehashes what happened in Moana 1, but it's objectively worse. There's a bunch of side characters that come along, and they're really boring and uninteresting. And the worst part about this is that Moana 2 was supposed to be a TV show, and it feels like it. A lot of these plot lines feel like they would be progressed over the course of a season, and not for one, like, movie. It felt like the pacing was off, the villain wasn't intimidating, and it turns out that the Bat Lady, I guess, was more of a villain than the actual villain. He had no arc, there was nothing really interesting about him, and then connecting all the seeds was a kind of cool plot point, but once again, I just didn't care. This movie didn't feel like they did anything different or special compared to the original Moana. Moana 1 as a standalone movie was a really good film. But then, complicating it and adding all these extra pieces to something that should have been a single movie just makes it worse and a worse overall experience for me. I don't think that this movie should have ever been made. I liked Moana by itself, but then adding all this extra stuff and overcomplicating everything is just unnecessary. And we're going to start this year the same way that I started last year, talking about the worst movie of last year. Megamind 2 was just so bad. It was so bad, I made 2 videos on it. And I wanted to make a third one talking about the TV show, but at that point, that was just dragging a dead horse. Megamind 2, The Doom Syndicate, whatever the fuck, was just such a bad film. It was god-awful. Honestly, the fact that they dragged the Megamind legacy down like that is just an absolute crime. It's a travesty, honestly. If you want to see my full, really great in-depth review of that movie, you can go and see it in the iCard or the description down below. But man, Megamind 2 was the most boring, choppy mess of a film ever. The pacing was awful. The animation was terrible. They couldn't even bring back the original voice actors, so it sounded like crap too. There was a bunch of animation errors. There was just a whole lot of nothing, and it was only there to set up the new TV show that they were making. So I just don't like this film. There's nothing redeemable about it. If you guys want to see me talk about the TV show, get this video to, I don't know, 60 likes, and I'll talk about the TV show in its own video. But it's just bad.